Joining me now is my old friend and colleague, Jim Acosta. He's an independent journalist. He's a former White House correspondent. He's the host of the Jim Acosta Show podcast and the author of The Enemy of the People, A Dangerous Time to Tell the Truth in America. A dangerous time to tell the truth in America. Jim, sounds like words that could be over the top, except it's not even close.
Yeah, Ali, it's great to see you. There was a time when I was accused of being too opinionated in covering Donald Trump. I think maybe I wasn't opinionated enough. I think that might be the case. But Ali, it's a great setup that you laid out for the viewers there. I think we're in a situation right now where, I think we have to make it very clear to the American people, you can't speak truth to power if those in power can crush the truth. And I remember during my press pass case, when they took my press pass away during the first Trump administration, the Justice Department lawyers who were representing the administration told the federal judge in the case that they wanted to pick and choose who gets to cover the White House, who gets to cover the president. That's essentially what they're doing at the Pentagon right now. If you look at these Pentagon briefings, they're stacked with ringers and, MAGA ringers, outlets that are friendly to the Trump administration. And so, the arresting of journalists, that is another obvious problem for freedom of the press right now. And, as I tell people when I go out and speak about this kind of stuff from time to time, just look at the countries around the world that don't have a free press. They are not places where you want to live.
So let's talk about where all of this sits on a continuum, because in the first Trump administration, when this press pass incident occurred with you, there were constant instances of the president or government officials insulting reporters, telling them off, telling them to sit down, telling them to stop talking, taking their mic away. Then it escalates into things like yours, where they take your mic away, then they take your pass away. And to the average person in America, none of this seems like the price of gas or the things they actually think about. When does it become about your security, your democracy, and your basic rights as an American? How do you cross over the Donald Trump doesn't like reporters into a world in which you're endangered because of the things that they do?
Well, I think a part of this, Ali, and I think you know this too, that, when Trump goes after reporters, he's unleashing, bots and death threats, quite frankly, against those journalists, against those news organizations. That happened to me. That's happened to a number of journalists who have covered Trump in this beat. But at the same time, I think we have to also call out where a lot of this is coming from. And yes, he started a lot of this during the first administration. It's gotten much worse during the second administration. I never thought I would see a day when he was able to ban the Associated Press from the Oval Office and Air Force One because they wouldn't refer to the Gulf of Mexico as the Gulf of America.
Let me just stop you there for a second. Let me just stop you there because that sounded crazy. Donald Trump's now floating the idea of renaming the Persian Gulf the Trump Gulf, or I don't know. I don't even know what it is.
Yeah, the Gulf of Trump.
Gulf of Trump, right? Gulf of Trump, right? These things sound stupid and nonsensical, except a major important journalistic organization like the Associated Press that is committed to the news decided that's not the basis on which we change names of things. And by the way, lots and lots of journalists depend on what the Associated Press's standards are to make their own determinations, and then they get banned. Like this is not a small matter.
No, it's not. And I think a lot of this stems from, the Supreme Court giving Trump a blanket immunity during the immunity case. And I know there are justices who will say, well, we didn't give him blanket immunity. That's how Trump interpreted it. And he's been acting that way ever since. And so, this amounts to, his threats to go after journalists. I think it sent the signal to Donald Trump that he can knock down part of the White House without any accountability. And the list goes on and on. It's starting a war in the Middle East without, following the Constitution. And now he's gotten himself in a jam. And today he's talking about blockading the Strait of Hormuz, which, is this a real threat or is this another empty threat coming from the president of the United States? The world can't tell the difference anymore. And so, this is why a free and independent and strong press is vital in this country right now. It goes right to what you were talking about. Ali, it's interesting that you mentioned Abu Ghraib. I was a young CBS correspondent on my way to Baghdad to cover the war in Iraq. And I remember getting to the bureau in Baghdad and they said, Jim, did you hear about Abu Ghraib? And I said, who's he? They said, it's not a he, it's an it. And I covered one of the first court martials that stemmed from that controversy for CBS News. And imagine if we weren't able to have that kind of ability to cover events that are as important as our own military violating the values of the United States. I mean, that's what is so precious, I think, to Americans. And I think it's great that you highlight the importance of a free press. I mean, I think there are other threats to it too. When we have these giant media conglomerates buying up media companies and news organizations, we can't have oligarchs owning the news in the United States. I think that is also a potential threat.
Well, this is an important matter, and they go hand in hand. So let's take a quick break. We'll come back on the other side, and let's have that conversation, that those two things are not separated from each other. Jim Acosta, you're watching Velshi. I'm back with Jim Acosta. He's an independent journalist. He's a former White House correspondent. He's just an important guy to generally cover these days, to watch, to understand this situation we're in with the news. And Jim, you just brought up a really important point. There's an election in Hungary today, and the first time in more than a decade, the sort of authoritarian democratic NATO leader, Viktor Orban, might lose his election. We don't know. But there's a couple things that go on in a place like Hungary. There's both press limitations and the idea of just having a friendly press, right? People who you don't actually have to put rules on because they understand the deal, that they are friendly to you and good things happen to them. That's happening in America now.
It is. And we've got to be really careful about this, Ali. I mean, you can't have a situation. I mean, you just look at what's taken place with Paramount and WBD. If these two companies merge, you could have a situation where you have a very MAGA-friendly company, a MAGA-friendly family owning not just CBS, but potentially CNN. And, it's an unusual thing to see develop in this country, but it is taking us down the path of what we see in Putin's Russia and Orban's Hungary, where you have the oligarchs buying up large media companies that are friendly with the people who are in power. And that's just not the way we've done things in this country for many, many years. And so, I think it's something we have to guard against. There's been a lot of folks like myself speaking out against it, and I think we have to continue to do so. I mean, just look at the what's taking place in local news. The Nexstar Tegna merger might give one company control over the airways for something like 80% of the households in the United States. I mean, is this really a free and independent press that we have in America when you have that kind of control over major news organizations and local news?
Because then you're not struggling with whether Mark Felt, Deep Throat, has somebody to give the story to. Yeah. It's that you now have people who have information to leak and reporters saying, not touching that story. That's not something we're going to run. Right. So eventually you don't need the press restrictions because the press just starts restricting itself.
It does. You get into self-censorship, editing, and you have a potential situation. I think it's already starting to emerge where, the people in power can call up the news organization, the people in charge of that news organization, and say, hey, wait a minute, what's going on here? And then the executives at that news organization talk to their anchors, reporters, journalists, and say, we better knock it off. We can't cover this guy this way. It's just not going to fly if you want to keep your job. And so that's a whole different kind of crackdown on the media that people in the United States haven't really experienced before. And I think it's something we have to be very careful about. I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, imagine if Jeff Bezos owned the Washington Post back in the 1970s. Would Bernstein even, gotten very far in the Watergate investigation? Who knows? And so, I think, we have to maintain a strong and free and independent press in this country. I kind of think it's the whole ball game. Just the other day, Brendan Carr was bragging at CPAC about how they've, bounced certain hosts from their positions. And I was glad that he mentioned my name. I'm glad that I still live rent free in their head. But it's not exactly a good thing for our democracy. And, they're bragging about who owns major news organizations in this country. I mean, that is not normal. That is not who we are. And it's not the American way.
I mean, literally, the Secretary of Defense said it in a press conference the other day. Can't wait till the Ellisons own CNN so that they'll get coverage that they prefer. Jim, thanks for the work you do, as always. Jim Acosta is an independent journalist. It's a really big deal. What a title, independent journalist. I mean, that's what keeps our democracy going. He's also a former White House correspondent. He's the author of an important book called The Enemy of the People, A Dangerous Time to Tell the Truth in America.